Hello, I'm here to read chapter 13, titled Point of our Bearwalker book. Do I have to tell you that it was Heidi who screamed? Histrionic is how Mr. Wilbur referred to her. I don't have to look that word up to know that it means theatrical. Theatrical or not, it resulted in a general panic that was finally quelled by the arrival of Mr. Wilbur and the Philos, with me as their light bearer. There had been no objections to my turning on my big light to lead them around the bend of the mass of confused campers who were not being calmed down by Mrs. Smiler, who had somehow dropped and broken her flashlight in the ensuing confusion. She and the three parent chaperones, all of whom lacked flashlights of their own, were as much in the dark as the kids. Settle, Mr. Wilbur says. His familiar, commanding voice has its effect. It gets everyone's attention. Everyone stops trying to talk at once, even Heidi. Admittedly, it helps that Tara has her arm around Heidi's shoulders and her hand over her friend's mouth. Adrenaline is an amazing thing. When you get frightened and suddenly excited about something, your body pumps it into your blood and you're capable of energetic action. I'm thinking of that as I watch the Philos. They weren't just following me with the lights as I ran along the path. They were practically carrying me, leaving Mr. Wilbur behind. I guess a lifetime of taking care of kids means that when they think kids are in trouble, they spring into action. And any arthritis or heart problems that has to take a back seat. The two of them are moving among the kids, comforting some, gently teasing others, asking one or two to help them sort things out. I don't know beans about running a camp, but I can tell they're really good at this. Mr. Wilbur's holding my big flashlight now, its beam making a big circle on the ground in front of him like a heatless campfire. I handed my light to him before I pulled out the mag light on its Velcro strap that is now fastened around my forehead. Of course, it's off right now because I'd be blinding people with it whenever I turn my head in some direction. I want to be able to look around now and see who's here without attracting attention to myself. What I've seen so far is worrisome. Two people are not here. Everyone calm now? Mr. Wilbur asks. He holds up his right hand, palm facing forward, and puts his index finger on his left hand to his lips. We all know this sign is for us to be quiet and pay attention because he uses it at least 3 times a day in class. We follow suit with 34 8th grade hands. 34 index fingers are pressed to silent lips. Mr. Wilbur looks over at Mrs. Smiler and the 3 chaperones who've been counting heads. They're all here, Mrs. Smiler says. No students are missing. She's being redundant, I think, saying that same thing twice in 2 different ways. So am I, for that matter. She's trying to look calm, but she's nervous, as I am. This, by the way, is one of the things that sucks about being 13. You are just old enough to realize that those adults you used to think had all the answers are sometimes just as confused and clueless as you are. All right, Mr. Wilbur says. Good. Now, Heidi, can you, my dear young lass, tell me why you just screamed like the proverbial Irish banshee? That joking tone of his and the thick Irish accent he puts on it are just what's needed right now, even though things are serious. It makes even Heidi smile. It just scared me when the light went out all of a sudden and then somebody grabbed my shoulder from behind and growled at me. Who did that? Mr. Wilbur starts to say, then shakes his head. Do I even have to ask? He says, turning his gaze on Willie Donner. Guilty as charged, Mr. W., Willie says, a little smirk on his face vanishing when Heidi turns and punches him in the left bicep. Ow, that hurt! People! Everyone turns back to Mr. Wilbur again. Let us not go medieval on one another. I'll let that punch go, Heidi. We'll call it justified retribution. Very Old Testament. But here is a new commandment. There shall be no more hitting, grabbing, or intentional freaking out thy neighbor. And we're heading back to the main building. He pauses to scan the crowd. I know he's looking for me, and I stand up. His eyes meet mine, and he presses his lips together and nods. Even though I'm more scared than I've ever been in my entire life, even though I have this feeling of absolute certainty that the worst is still to come, I haven't panicked. Mr. Wilbur can see that. And even though I'm the littlest kid in our class, I can see that he's relying on me. I've earned his respect by not acting scared. It's only logical, though. Like my Uncle Jules said to me once, just being scared ought to be enough for anyone. Acting scared on top of it is just a waste of time and energy. Drag, Mr. Wilbur says with a smile, tapping himself on the chest. Baron, your point, man. He knows all about my family's military history and knows I'll understand what he's saying. I'm to go to the head of the column. He'll be the last person, making sure that no one straggles or gets left behind. Yes, sir, I replied, snapping a salute. Then I turn on my forehead mag light. With the Philos close behind me and the other 5 adults placed at regular intervals in the group, I start leading our group back up the trail, past the lightless pole, toward the darkened buildings of Camp Chuckamuck.